February 9th, 2004. Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. 7:27 p.m. A passing motorist saw a car in the ditch, a black Saturn sedan. It had crashed into a snowbank on a sharp curve. The front end was damaged, the airbags had deployed, but when the motorist stopped to help, something was wrong. The driver's door was open, but there was no driver, no one in the car, no one near the car, just an empty vehicle, engine still warm, keys missing. The motorist called 911. Police arrived within minutes. They searched the area, looked in the woods, checked nearby houses. Nothing. No driver, no footprints leading away, no blood, no signs of injury. It was as if the driver had simply vanished into the cold New Hampshire night. The crashed car belonged to Maura Murray, a 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Smart. Athletic, from a close family. Maura had left campus earlier that day, packed up her dorm room, emailed her professors saying there was a death in the family, got in her car and drove north. But there was no death in the family. That was a lie. Maura drove 150 miles from Massachusetts to the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Why? No one knows. She crashed her car on a rural road, and then she disappeared. For over 20 years, investigators, family members, journalists, and internet sleuths have tried to solve the mystery of Maura Murray. Where did she go after the crash? Did she run into the woods and succumb to the cold? Was she picked up by a stranger? Did she run away to start a new life? The New Hampshire State Police have investigated thousands of leads, conducted extensive searches, followed countless tips. But Maura Murray has never been found. Not alive, not dead, not a trace. This is one of the most analyzed, debated, and controversial missing persons cases in modern American history. Because nothing about Maura's disappearance makes sense. Every detail raises more questions than answers. This is the complete story. Every fact, every theory, every twist in a case that has obsessed the internet for 2 decades. Chapter 2. Who was Maura Murray? To understand this mystery, we need to know who Maura Murray was. Maura was born May 4, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts. She was the fourth of 5 children born to Fred Murray and Laurie Murray, later divorced. Maura grew up in a tight-knit family. Her father, Fred, was an insurance salesman, hard-working, devoted to his kids. He took them camping, hiking, exploring New Hampshire's White Mountains. Maura was close to her father. Very close. They had a special bond. Fred taught Maura to be independent, to be strong, to handle anything. Maura was exceptional. In high school, she excelled at everything. She was a star athlete, track and field, cross country. She was on the honor roll. She had friends. She was popular, but not cliquish. After high school, Maura attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. Yes, West Point, one of the most prestigious military academies in the country. This tells you something about Maura. She was disciplined, driven, smart enough and tough enough to get into West Point, but Maura only stayed at West Point for a year. In 2001, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She enrolled in the nursing program. Why did she leave West Point? Some say she struggled with the military discipline. Others say she wanted to be closer to home, closer to her family. The transfer wasn't a failure. Maura was doing well at UMass. She maintained a strong GPA. She was on track to graduate with her nursing degree. Maura was in a relationship with a man named Bill Rausch. Bill was an Army officer stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They'd been together since before Maura left West Point. It was a long-distance relationship, but they talked regularly, visited when they could. By all accounts, Maura and Bill had a complicated relationship, loving but tumultuous. They fought sometimes, broke up and got back together. The distance was hard, but they were committed to each other, planning a future together. In February 2004, Maura was a junior at UMass. She was 21 years old. She had friends. She was involved in campus life. She worked part-time as a security guard at an art gallery on campus. To everyone who knew her, Maura seemed fine, normal, maybe a little stressed. College is stressful, but nothing alarming. But something was bothering Maura, something she didn't tell anyone about, and whatever it was, it would lead her to pack up her car and drive into the mountains and disappear. Chapter 3. The Days Before. Something was wrong. Let's talk about the days leading up to Maura's disappearance, because there were signs, red flags that something was wrong. Thursday, February 5th, 2004. Maura was working her evening shift as a security guard at the campus art gallery. Around 1 a.m., she received a phone call. We don't know who called. We don't know what was said. But after the phone call, Maura broke down. She started crying. Sobbing, uncontrollably. Her supervisor found her and asked what was wrong. Maura couldn't explain. She was too upset to work. Her supervisor sent her home. What was that phone call? Who called her? What did they say? Maura never told anyone. And we still don't know. Saturday, February 7th, 2004. Maura went car shopping with her father, Fred. Fred had come to visit for the weekend. He was concerned about Maura's car. Her 1996 Saturn was old and unreliable. It had been giving her problems. Fred wanted to help Maura find a better car. They spent Saturday looking at used cars, test driving, negotiating. They found a car Maura liked, but the paperwork couldn't be completed that day. They'd have to come back. That evening, Fred took Maura to dinner. They talked, laughed, caught up. By all accounts, it was a nice evening. Father and daughter spending time together. Fred said Maura seemed normal, maybe a little tired, but fine. Nothing that worried him. After dinner, Fred dropped Maura off at her dorm. He drove back to Connecticut where he lived. That was the last time Fred Murray would ever see his daughter. Sunday, February 8th, 2004. The next day, Maura worked another shift at the art gallery. Again, around 1 a.m., almost exactly 72 hours after the mysterious phone call, Maura's supervisor found her crying. This time, Maura was sitting at her desk, sobbing, visibly distraught. Her supervisor asked what was wrong. Maura said her sister had gotten into an argument with her fiancé. That's all she would say. Was this true? Maybe. Maura's older sister, Kathleen, was engaged and did have relationship problems. But was that really why Maura was crying? Or was Maura lying, covering up whatever was really bothering her? We don't know. Monday, February 9th, 2004. Monday morning, Maura attended some classes. She went to her nursing clinical. Everything seemed normal. Around 1 p.m., Maura sent emails to her professors and her work supervisor. The emails all said essentially the same thing. Due to a death in the family, I will be out for the next week. But there was no death in the family. This was a complete lie. All of Maura's family members were alive and accounted for. No one had died. No one was sick. There was no emergency. So why did Maura lie? Why did she tell her professors and her job That someone had died? Was she planning to disappear? Was she buying herself time before anyone would realize she was missing? Around 1:30 p.m., Maura went to an ATM near campus. Security camera footage shows her withdrawing $280 from her bank account, nearly all the money she had. Then Maura went to a liquor store. She bought $40 worth of alcohol: vodka, Kahlua, Bailey's Irish Cream, boxed wine. Why was Maura buying so much alcohol? Was she planning to drink alone? Was she going to a party? Was she planning to meet someone? We don't know. Around 4:00 p.m., Maura was seen on her dorm floor. She was packing. She packed clothes, toiletries, textbooks, her laptop. She took a lot of stuff, more than you'd take for a weekend trip. But she didn't take everything. She left some things behind. She left a note on her bed. The note was for her boyfriend, Bill. It was an emotional letter. Some have described it as a breakup letter. Others say it was just an expression of frustration about their relationship. The exact contents of the note have never been fully disclosed, but it suggested Maura was unhappy, conflicted, struggling with something. Around 4:30 p.m., Maura got in her 1996 black Saturn sedan. She drove away from UMass Amherst. She headed north, toward New Hampshire, toward the White Mountains, and 3 hours later, her car would be found crashed on Route 112, and Maura would be gone. Chapter 4. The Drive North. Let's talk about Maura's drive, because her route tells us something. Maybe. Maura left UMass Amherst around 4:30 p.m. She drove north on Interstate 91. This is a major highway that runs through Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire. At some point, Maura exited I-91 and got on Route 112. This is a 2-lane rural road that winds through the White Mountains. Route 112 is also known as the Kancamagus Highway in some sections. It's a scenic route, beautiful in the summer, dangerous in the winter. Why did Maura take this route? Was she going somewhere specific? Or was she just driving? One theory: Maura was heading to a condo or cabin in the White Mountains. Her family had vacationed in this area many times. Fred Murray loved the White Mountains. He'd taken his kids there for years. Maybe Maura was going to one of those places, a place that held happy memories, a place to be alone, to think. But investigators checked. The family condo wasn't available. It was rented to someone else that week, and Maura hadn't made a reservation anywhere else. So where was she going? Another theory: Maura wasn't going anywhere specific. She was just driving, escaping, running from whatever was bothering her. The White Mountains represented freedom to Maura, peace. Maybe she just wanted to be there, even if she had nowhere to stay. Or maybe, and this is darker, Maura was going somewhere to hurt herself. Some people think Maura was suicidal, that she drove into the mountains intending to harm herself. Maybe she planned to drink the alcohol she bought and walk into the woods. Hypothermia is a relatively quick death in February New Hampshire temperatures. This theory is supported by some evidence. The mysterious crying episodes, the death in the family lie. Was she planning her own death? The alcohol purchase. The breakup letter to Bill, the fact that Maura seemed troubled. But other evidence contradicts this. Maura packed textbooks. Why would you pack school books if you're planning to die? She withdrew money. Why would you need money if you're not coming back? Her family says Maura had no history of depression or suicidal thoughts. The truth is, we don't know why Maura drove north that day. We don't know where she was going. We don't know what she was thinking. All we know is that around 7:27 p.m. on a dark, cold February night, Maura's car crashed on Route 112. And that's where the real mystery begins. Chapter 5. The Crash. February 9th, 2004. Route 112, Haverhill, New Hampshire. 7:27 p.m. The location is important. Let me describe it. Route 112 is a rural two-lane highway. It winds through heavily forested mountains. There are very few houses, even fewer streetlights. In February, it's dark by 5:20 p.m. The crash site was on a sharp curve, a 90-degree turn to the left. There's a warning sign, but if you're driving too fast or not paying attention, it's easy to miss the curve. On the right side of the road, Maura's side, there's a small snowbank. Beyond that, trees, forest, wilderness. On the left side, there are a few houses, scattered. Not a neighborhood, just isolated homes. This area is called Woodsville, Haverhill. It's not a town, really, just a stretch of road with a few houses. Very rural, very isolated. At 7:27 p.m., Maura's black Saturn came around that curve. For whatever reason, driving too fast, distracted, unfamiliar with the road, she didn't make the turn. The car went off the right side of the road, hit the snowbank. The impact wasn't severe. The airbags deployed. The car sustained front-end damage, but it was still drivable. The car spun slightly and came to rest partly on the road, partly in the snowbank. The driver's door was on the roadside. The passenger side was in the snow. At 7:27 p.m., a witness named Butch Atwood was driving his school bus home. He lived nearby. He drove past Maura's crashed car. Butch stopped. He got out of his bus and walked over to the Saturn. He saw a young woman in the driver's seat. The woman was Maura Murray. Butch asked if she was okay, asked if she needed help, offered to call police. Maura said no. She said she'd already called AA, roadside assistance. She didn't need help. Butch wasn't convinced. The woman seemed shaken. The car was clearly damaged. It was cold, dark, but the woman insisted she was fine. Butch got back in his bus and drove the short distance to his house. He immediately called 911 to report the crash. Butch Atwood was the last known person to see Maura Murray. Around the same time, 7:30 p.m. or so, another witness, a woman who lived across the street, looked out her window. She saw the crashed car. She saw someone with a flashlight or cell phone moving around near the car. This witness didn't call police. She assumed someone was already handling it. But she saw movement. Someone was at the scene. Probably Maura. At 7:46 p.m., about 19 minutes after the crash, New Hampshire State Police Sergeant Cecil Smith arrived at the scene. The car was still there. Engine off. Keys missing. Driver's door locked or closed. Reports vary. But Maura was gone. Sergeant Smith searched the car. He looked inside. He found Maura's AAA card and cell phone, MapQuest directions to Burlington, Vermont. Why Burlington? We don't know. A book. Not Without Peril. A book about people who died in the White Mountains, Maura's schoolwork and textbooks. Some of Maura's belongings, the alcohol she'd bought. Some bottles were in the car. Some seemed to be missing. What he didn't find. Maura car keys, Maura's wallet, or ID, Maura's credit cards. Sergeant Smith walked the road, shined his flashlight into the woods, called out. No response. He knocked on doors of the few nearby houses, asked if anyone had seen the driver. Butch Atwood said he'd seen a young woman about 20 minutes ago. She'd refused help, but now she was gone. Smith called for a K-9 unit. Search dogs. If Maura had walked into the woods, the dogs would track her. Chapter 6. The search begins. The K-9 unit arrived around 8:00 p.m. A dog named Finn, trained in search and rescue. Finn was given Maura's scent from items in the car. The dog immediately picked up a trail. Finn followed the scent east on Route 112. Away from the crash site, along the shoulder of the road, the dog tracked for about 100 yards, and then stopped. At a point in the road, Finn lost the scent completely. The trail ended. What does this mean? The most likely explanation: Maura got into a vehicle at that spot. She was picked up by someone. Or she got into a vehicle of her own, though we know her Saturn was still at the crash site. When someone gets into a vehicle, their scent trail ends. That's why Finn stopped tracking. Police launched a search. They searched the surrounding woods. They walked the road in both directions. They checked nearby houses. Nothing. No sign of Maura. No footprints in the snow leading into the woods. No evidence she'd walked away. It was as if Maura had simply vanished 100 yards from her crashed car. The next day, February 10th, 2004, the search intensified. More police, more volunteers, helicopters, search dogs, ATVs. They searched miles of forest, checked abandoned buildings, looked in drainage pipes and culverts. Nothing. Police contacted Maura's family. Fred Murray drove to New Hampshire immediately. He arrived Tuesday morning. Fred was frantic. This wasn't like Maura. She wouldn't just disappear. Something was wrong. He knew it. Fred organized his own search efforts. He put up missing person posters. He talked to media. He walked the roads and woods himself, calling Maura's name, searching. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. No sign of Maura Murray. Chapter 7. The Initial Investigation. Let's talk about what police did in the immediate aftermath. New Hampshire State Police treated this as a missing person case, not a crime, not a kidnapping, just a missing person. Their theory: Maura crashed her car, was possibly intoxicated. There was alcohol in the car and a wine box had spilled, and walked away from the scene to avoid a DUI charge. They believed Maura had run into the woods. Maybe she got lost. Maybe she succumbed to hypothermia. Her body was out there somewhere, and it would be found when the snow melted. This theory seemed reasonable to police, but it had problems. Problem 1. Why would Maura risk dying in the woods to avoid a DUI? Yes, a DUI would be serious. But death is more serious. Maura was smart. Would she really risk her life to avoid a drunk driving charge? Problem 2. The scent trail ended on the road. If Maura walked into the woods, the K-9 would have followed the scent into the woods. But the scent ended on the road. That suggests Maura got into a vehicle. Problem 3. No evidence of Maura in the woods. Extensive searches found nothing. No footprints, no disturbed snow. No items dropped. Nothing. Problem 4. Maura had her cell phone in the car. If Maura was avoiding police, wouldn't she take her phone? Why leave it behind? But police stuck with their theory. They believed Maura was in the woods. They focused their search efforts on the wilderness around the crash site. Meanwhile, Fred Murray had a different theory. He believed Maura was taken by someone, abducted. Fred thought about the timeline. Maura crashed at 7:27 p.m. Police arrived at 7:46 p.m. That's 19 minutes. In those 19 minutes, Maura disappeared. She either walked away voluntarily or someone picked her up. Fred believed someone picked her up. Maybe a predator. Maybe someone who saw the crash and offered help. And then something bad happened. Fred begged police to investigate this angle, to look for suspects, to treat this as a potential abduction. But police were skeptical. There was no evidence of a crime, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses to an abduction. Maura's boyfriend, Bill Rausch, flew in from Oklahoma. He joined the search. He was devastated. He and Fred searched together, putting up posters, talking to locals, searching the woods. Bill was cooperative with police. He gave statements, answered questions. He wanted to find Maura. But as time went on, some people, including some in the media and online communities, started to wonder, could Bill be involved? Was his trip to help search genuine? Or was he inserting himself into the investigation because he was guilty of something? There's no evidence Bill did anything wrong, but the suspicion was there, and it would grow over the years. Chapter 8. Maura's background. The troubled details. As the investigation continued, more details about Maura's life emerged. Some of these details were troubling. The credit card fraud. In late 2003, just months before her disappearance, Maura was caught using stolen credit card numbers to order pizza delivery. It wasn't her credit card. She'd somehow obtained someone else's credit card information and used it to order food for her dorm. UMass police caught her. She was charged with credit card fraud. She had a court date scheduled for later in February 2004. This was shocking. Maura was a nursing student, honor roll, from a good family. Why would she commit credit card fraud? Some people think Maura was stressed about this court case, worried about her future. Maybe the fraud charge motivated her to run away. But others point out that credit card fraud for pizza is a relatively minor offense. She'd probably get probation. Was that really enough to make her disappear? The car accident in February 2004, on February 7, 2004, just 2 days before Maura disappeared, she had a different car accident. Maura was driving near UMass. She crashed her father's Toyota Corolla. Fred had lent it to her. The car was totaled. Maura wasn't injured, but she was upset. The crash was her fault. She'd hit a guardrail. Fred wasn't angry. He was just glad Maura was okay. But Maura was shaken. Some people think this accident traumatized Maura. Maybe she was worried about insurance, about disappointing her father. 2 days later, she'd crash again, in her own car, on Route 112. Was this a pattern? Was Maura a bad driver? Or was something else going on? Distraction, impairment, emotional distress. The drinking. There's evidence Maura had been drinking heavily in the weeks before her disappearance. Friends said Maura sometimes drank to cope with stress. College drinking is common. But some wondered if Maura had a problem. The night she disappeared, there was alcohol in her car. Had she been drinking while driving? Was she drunk when she crashed? A wine box had spilled in the car. The interior smelled of alcohol. But it's unclear if Maura had consumed any before the crash, or if the alcohol just spilled during the impact. The relationship issues. Maura and Bill's relationship was complicated. They loved each other, but they fought. Bill was stationed in Oklahoma. Maura was in Massachusetts. Long-distance relationships are hard. There were rumors, never confirmed, that Bill had cheated on Maura, that Maura had found out and was devastated. There were also rumors that Maura had been seeing someone else, a local guy in Massachusetts. Were these rumors true? We don't know. Bill has always maintained that he and Maura were committed to each other. but the relationship clearly had stress. The letter Maura left on her bed suggested she was struggling with the relationship. The emotional breakdowns. Remember the crying episodes? February 5th at 1 a.m. February 8th at 1 a.m. What was going on? Why was Maura so upset? Some possibilities. Relationship problems with Bill's stress from school and the credit card court case. Something else entirely that we don't know about. Maura's family says she wasn't depressed. She wasn't suicidal. But she was clearly dealing with something heavy. Put it all together, and you get a picture of a young woman under a lot of stress, dealing with multiple pressures, making some questionable decisions. But does any of this explain her disappearance? Not really. Lots of college students deal with stress, relationships, legal issues, and drinking. They don't vanish. So what happened to Maura Murray? Chapter 9. The Theories. Part 1. 20 years later, there are dozens of theories about what happened to Maura Murray. Let me walk through the major ones. Theory 1. Maura succumbed to the elements. This is the police's original theory, and still the most likely explanation according to law enforcement. Maura crashed her car. She was scared of getting a DUI. She ran into the woods to hide until police left. But it was February in New Hampshire. Temperatures were below freezing. Maura was wearing jeans and a light jacket, not proper winter gear. Maura got lost in the woods. Maybe she was disoriented from the crash. Maybe she'd been drinking. Maybe the darkness confused her. She walked deeper into the forest, fell, injured herself. Hypothermia set in quickly. Within hours, she died. Her body is still out there, in the vast, white mountain wilderness, hidden under decades of leaves, snow, and terrain. Evidence supporting this. February temperatures were deadly cold. Maura wasn't dressed for wilderness survival. Extensive searches have found nothing, suggesting her body is well hidden. The area is dense forest with difficult terrain. Bodies can remain undiscovered for years in that environment. Problems with this theory. The K9 trail ended on the road, not in the woods. No footprints in the snow leading into the forest. Maura would have to walk miles into the woods to be completely hidden. Why would she walk that far? Seasonal hunters, hikers, and loggers cover that area constantly. Someone should have found remains by now. Theory 2. Maura was picked up by a local resident. Maybe Maura got a ride from someone, a good Samaritan who saw the crash and offered help. Maura accepted the ride, grateful for the help. Maybe she asked to be taken to a motel or gas station. But then, something went wrong. Maybe the driver wasn't a good Samaritan. Maybe he had bad intentions. Maura was abducted, harmed, and killed. Her body was disposed of in a location that's never been found. Evidence supporting this. The K9 trail ending on the road suggests Maura got into a vehicle. The timeline, 19 minutes before police arrived, gave someone time to pick her up. Route 112 is a somewhat busy road. Several cars would have passed. Maura didn't know the area well. She might accept a ride from a local. Problems with this theory. No evidence of any specific suspect. No witnesses reported seeing Maura get into a vehicle. Maura left her cell phone in the car. Would she do that if getting a ride? Theory 3. Maura ran away to start a new life. Maybe Maura's disappearance was intentional. She planned it. The death in the family email gave her a week before people would look for her. The cash withdrawal gave her money. The drive north was her escape. Maura staged the accident, Or the accident was real, but she used it as cover and walked away. Got a ride from someone she'd arranged to meet. Started a new life somewhere else. Evidence supporting this. The death in the family lie suggests planning Maura withdrew most of her money. She packed a lot of belongings. She'd been upset and stressed. Maybe she wanted to escape her life. Problems with this theory. Maura left her cell phone and credit cards. How would she survive? No activity on her bank accounts, credit cards, Social Security number since 2004. Maura was close to her family. Could she really cut them off forever? No confirmed sightings in 20 years. Starting a new life without ID or resources is nearly impossible in the modern world. Theory 4. Maura went into the woods to harm herself. This is a darker theory. Maybe Maura drove to New Hampshire intending to commit suicide. The White Mountains held happy childhood memories. Maybe Maura wanted to die in a place she loved. She crashed the car, accident or intentionally, then walked into the woods with the intention of dying from exposure. Her body is out there. She succeeded in her plan. Evidence supporting this. Maura had been emotionally distressed, crying episodes. She bought a lot of alcohol, perhaps to drink before harming herself. She brought a book about people dying in the White Mountains. The death in the family email could refer to her own planned death. She left an emotional letter to build problems with this theory. Maura's family insists she wasn't suicidal. She packed textbooks. Why bring schoolwork if you're planning to die? She withdrew money. Why would you need cash if you're not coming back? No suicide note was found. Her father saw her the weekend before. He said she seemed fine. Each theory has evidence supporting it. And each has problems. That's why this case remains unsolved. Chapter 10. The Suspicious Circumstances. Let me tell you about some specific details that make this case even more mysterious. The red truck. Several witnesses reported seeing a red or maroon truck near the crash site around the time of Maura's disappearance. One witness, a school bus driver named Butch Atwood, the man who talked to Maura, said he saw a red truck near the scene shortly after he went home. Another witness said they saw a red truck with Massachusetts plates parked at the crash site. Police tried to find this truck. They asked locals, put out alerts, but they never identified the vehicle or its driver. Was the red truck involved? Did the driver pick up Maura? Or was it just a coincidence, a local resident passing by? We don't know. The red truck remains a mystery. The 911 call on February 11, 2004, 2 days after Maura disappeared, a woman called the Haverhill, New Hampshire police from a payphone. The woman was crying. She said she was the missing girl. She said she was in a specific town. Police traced the call. It came from the Red Cross building in Haverhill. Police rushed to the location, but there was no one there, no sign of who made the call. Was it Maura? Was someone calling on Maura's behalf? Was it a hoax? Police never identified the caller. The call remains unexplained. The cell phone records. Maura's cell phone was found in her car. It was locked. Police couldn't access it immediately. When they finally got into the phone, they reviewed her call records and text messages. Most were routine: calls to Bill, calls to family, text messages to friends. But there was one strange detail. On the evening of February 9th, the day Maura disappeared, her cell phone received a voicemail. Police listened to the voicemail. But the caller didn't leave a message. It was just silence. Then the call ended. Who called Maura that night? Why didn't they leave a message? Was it someone looking for her? Or someone who knew she was missing? We don't know. The call couldn't be traced. The Maura Murray effect. Here's something strange. In the years since Maura disappeared, other young women have vanished from the same general area of New Hampshire and Vermont. Brianna Maitland disappeared in March 2004, just 1 month after Maura, from a town about 70 miles away. Other women have vanished from the region in suspicious circumstances. Is this connected to Maura's case? Is there a serial predator operating in northern New England? Police don't think so. They say these cases are unrelated, coincidental, but it's unsettling. The White Mountains and northern New England have seen an unusual number of missing person cases involving young women. Chapter 11. The Investigation Problems. The investigation into Maura's disappearance has been plagued by problems. Mistakes were made. Opportunities were missed. Let me detail some of the issues. Problem 1. Delayed response. When Maura's car was found, police treated it as a minor crash. A driver fled the scene to avoid a DUI, not urgent. Police didn't immediately search extensively. They didn't set up roadblocks. They didn't call in a large search team right away. By the time police realized this might be a serious missing person case, critical hours had passed. If Maura was abducted, the abductor had a big head start. Problem 2. Evidence handling Maura's car wasn't processed as a potential crime scene. At least not immediately. The car sat in a tow yard for days before being thoroughly examined. During that time, it wasn't secured. People walked around it, potentially contaminating evidence. By the time forensics examined the car carefully, valuable evidence may have been lost or compromised. Problem 3. Witness interviews. Police interviewed the handful of witnesses who saw Maura or the crash site, but some interviews were delayed. Memories faded. Also, some witnesses gave conflicting information, and police didn't always follow up aggressively on discrepancies. For example, the red truck. Multiple witnesses mentioned it, but police never identified it. Was this a failure of investigation, or was the truck just not important? Problem 4. Search area police focused their search on the woods immediately around the crash site. They assumed Maura walked into the wilderness. But what if Maura went a different direction? What if she walked along the road? What if she was picked up miles away? The search area may have been too limited. Maura could be somewhere outside the initial search zone. Problem 5. Public relations. Fred Murray, Maura's father, has been critical of how police handled the case. He's accused them of not taking it seriously, of being dismissive, of not pursuing leads aggressively. Whether these criticisms are fair is debatable. Police say they've investigated thousands of tips. They've searched extensively. They've done their job. But the relationship between Maura's family and law enforcement has been strained. And that's hindered the investigation. When families and police don't work well together, cases suffer. Chapter 12. The Internet takes over in the mid-2000s. The Internet became obsessed with Maura Murray's case. Websites, forums, blogs, Reddit threads, Facebook groups, podcasts, YouTube channels. Thousands of amateur sleuths have analyzed every detail of this case. They've created timelines, reviewed evidence, proposed theories. Some of this attention has been helpful. Internet sleuths have kept the case in the public eye. They've generated new tips. They've pressured police to keep investigating. But some of this attention has been harmful. The armchair detectives. Some internet sleuths have become convinced they've solved the case. They've identified suspects. They've accused specific people, by name, of being involved in Maura's disappearance. These accusations are often based on flimsy evidence, speculation, coincidence. Innocent people have been harassed, their lives turned upside down by internet vigilantes who are convinced they're guilty. One local man who lived near the crash site was accused online of being involved. His name was plastered all over forums. People showed up at his house. He received threats. But police investigated him thoroughly. He had nothing to do with Maura's disappearance. He was just a local resident who happened to live nearby. This man's life was damaged by internet accusations, and he's not the only one. The conspiracy theories. The internet has generated wild conspiracy theories about Maura's case. Maura was involved in a drug ring. Maura was running from organized crime. Maura was murdered by a serial killer. Maura was abducted by a sex trafficking ring. Maura is alive and in witness protection. The police covered up evidence because they're involved. Most of these theories have no evidence. They're pure speculation. But once a theory is posted online, it spreads. People believe it, share it, treat it as fact. This creates noise. It buries actual evidence under layers of speculation. The family's pain. For Maura's family, the internet attention has been a double-edged sword. On one hand, the online community has kept Maura's case alive. The attention has generated tips. It's kept pressure on police. On the other hand, the family has had to deal with conspiracy theories about them, accusations, speculation about their private lives. Fred Murray has had to read online theories that he's somehow involved in his daughter's disappearance, that he knows more than he's saying. Maura's boyfriend, Bill, has been accused of murdering her, despite no evidence. Maura's siblings have been scrutinized, their lives dissected online. This is the dark side of internet sleuthing. Real people's lives are not entertainment, but that's how they're treated in online forums. Chapter 13. The Podcasts and Documentaries. Maura Murray's case has been featured in countless podcasts and documentaries. Let me mention a few. Missing Maura Murray podcast, hosted by Lance Reinstierna and Tim Pilleri. This podcast ran for several years in the 2010s. They interviewed witnesses, family members, and investigators. They proposed theories. They conducted their own investigation. The podcast brought significant attention to Maura's case. It generated new tips. It kept the story in the public consciousness. But it also had critics. Some felt the podcast was exploitative, that it sensationalized Maura's disappearance, that it gave a platform to unreliable witnesses. The Disappearance of Maura Murray, Oxygen TV series. In 2017, Oxygen Network aired a 6-part documentary series about Maura's case, hosted by journalist Maggie Frayling. The series featured interviews with Maura's family, investigators, and witnesses. It explored various theories. It showed the ongoing search efforts. The series renewed public interest in the case. It led to new tips being called in. Countless other coverage. Maura's case has been featured on Disappeared, Investigation Discovery, Unsolved Mysteries, Netflix Reboot, dozens of true crime YouTube channels, hundreds of podcasts, countless blog posts and articles. This level of media attention is unusual for a missing person case. Most missing persons don't get this much coverage. Why has Maura's case attracted so much attention? Part of it is the mystery. the unanswered questions, the strange circumstances. Part of it is Maura herself. She was young, attractive, intelligent. She's a sympathetic victim. And part of it is the internet age. Maura disappeared in 2004, right as the internet was becoming central to how we consume media and solve mysteries collectively. Chapter 14. Fred Murray's Quest. Let me talk about Fred Murray, Maura's father. For 20 years, Fred has dedicated his life to finding his daughter. He's spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's traveled thousands of miles. He's given countless interviews. Fred has organized searches, put up billboards, offered rewards, pressured police, hired private investigators. He's never given up, never stopped looking. Fred is convinced Maura was abducted. He doesn't believe she ran into the woods and died. He doesn't believe she ran away. He believes someone took her, someone harmed her, and he wants that person caught. Fred has clashed with law enforcement. He's been critical of their investigation. He's accused them of not doing enough. Police, in turn, have sometimes been frustrated with Fred. They say he interferes, that he's unwilling to consider other theories, that he's difficult to work with. But you have to understand Fred's perspective. This is his daughter, his little girl. She vanished. And 20 years later, he still doesn't know what happened. That kind of pain is unimaginable. The not knowing, the endless questions, the hope that keeps flickering even as years pass. Fred has aged visibly over the past 2 decades. The stress has taken a toll, but he won't stop, can't stop. He said, "I'll search for Maura until the day I die. She's my daughter. I owe her that." That's the dedication of a father who refuses to give up. Chapter 15. The suspects and persons of interest. Over the years, various people have been looked at as potential suspects or persons of interest. Let me tell you about a few. Bill Rausch, the boyfriend. Bill has always been a person of interest to some people, though not officially a suspect to police. The reasons: he was in a complicated relationship with Maura. He flew up to New Hampshire after she disappeared to help search. Some wonder if he was inserting himself. He's been accused, never proven, of being abusive. Some point to his military training. Could he have planned something sophisticated? But there's no evidence Bill was involved. He was in Oklahoma when Maura disappeared. He has alibis. He's cooperated with investigators. Most people close to the case don't think Bill had anything to do with Maura's disappearance, but the suspicion persists in some corners of the internet. I'll call him A, because naming suspects without evidence is irresponsible, was a local man who lived near the crash site. A became a target of internet sleuths. He was accused of abducting Maura. His property was searched by volunteers. He was harassed. Police investigated A thoroughly. They found no connection to Maura's disappearance. He was not involved, but his life was damaged by the accusations. Other locals. Several other local residents have been looked at over the years. People who lived near the crash site. People who drove Route 112 regularly. Police have investigated all credible leads. None have panned out. The truth is, there is no strong suspect in Maura Murray's case. No one that police have focused on as likely responsible. This is either because Maura died in the woods and there is no suspect, or because whoever took Maura left no evidence. Chapter 16. The Theories, Part 2, Wild Speculation. Beyond the main theories, there are some wilder ideas about what happened to Maura. The tandem driver theory. Some people believe Maura wasn't driving alone that night. They think there was a second vehicle, a tandem driver, following Maura or traveling with her. The theory goes, Maura crashed. The tandem driver stopped, picked her up, and drove away. Evidence for this is thin. It's based mainly on witness accounts of seeing other vehicles near the crash site. But who would this tandem driver be? A friend? A secret boyfriend? Someone helping Maura disappear? No one has been identified as a tandem driver, and there's no solid evidence this person exists. The witness involvement theory. Some people suspect one of the witnesses, someone who was at the scene or lived nearby, was actually involved in Maura's disappearance. Maybe they didn't just see the crash. Maybe they did something to Maura. This theory is based on inconsistencies in witness statements and suspicious behavior by certain individuals. But police have investigated all the witnesses. None have been charged or publicly named as suspects. The accident cover-up theory. Here's a wild one. What if Maura was hit by a car after the crash? What if she was walking on the road and a local resident accidentally struck her with their vehicle? The driver panicked. They hid Maura's body, and they've kept the secret for 20 years. This theory would explain why Maura disappeared so quickly and why there's no trace of her. But it's pure speculation. There's no evidence of a second accident. The organized crime theory. Some people think Maura was involved in something illegal. Drugs. Fraud. Something that connected her to dangerous people. When Maura disappeared, she was running from these people, or they found her and silenced her. This theory is based mostly on Maura's credit card fraud charge, but that was a small-time crime. Ordering pizza with stolen credit card numbers. There's no evidence Maura was involved in organized crime or drug trafficking. These wild theories show how desperate people are for answers. When the truth is unknown, speculation fills the void. But speculation is not evidence, and wild theories often do more harm than good. Chapter 17. The searches continue. For years, searches have been conducted in the area where Maura disappeared. Ground searches. Volunteers, family, and occasionally police have searched the woods around the crash site. They've walked grid patterns, looked in ravines, checked under fallen trees. Nothing. No sign of Maura. Cadaver dogs. Multiple times, cadaver dogs have been brought in. These dogs are trained to detect the scent of human remains. The dogs have searched the crash area and surrounding forest. They've indicated in a few spots, meaning they detected something. But when those areas were excavated, nothing was found. Sonar and diving. There are bodies of water in the area, ponds, streams, some deep enough to hide a body. Sonar equipment has been used to scan the bottoms. Divers have searched. Nothing. Aerial searches. Helicopters and drones have been used to search from above, looking for disturbed earth, clothing, anything that might indicate Maura's location. Nothing. The lack of evidence is maddening. If Maura died in the woods, where is her body? If she was abducted, where was she taken? 20 years. Thousands of hours of searching. Millions of dollars spent, and nothing. Chapter 18. The 2020s. New developments. In recent years, there have been a few new developments. DNA technology. Advanced DNA technology has been used on evidence from the case. But there's limited DNA to work with. Maura's DNA is known from family samples, but there's no unidentified DNA that might point to a suspect. Social media pressure. Facebook groups and Reddit communities have kept pressure on New Hampshire authorities. They've organized petitions. They've demanded the case be given more resources. This has led to renewed investigative efforts by police. Though publicly, police say they've never stopped investigating. Fred Murray's activism. Fred continues to be a tireless advocate. He's used social media to share updates, to ask for tips, to keep Maura's name in the public consciousness. He's also been critical of New Hampshire authorities. He's accused them of withholding information, of not being transparent about the investigation. This has created tension, but it's also kept the case from going completely cold. Oxygen Network. Investigation. The 2017 Oxygen series led to some new investigation. Private investigators hired by the network followed new leads. They examined a house that had been demolished near the crash site. They wondered if Maura could have been hidden in that house. They conducted searches, used ground-penetrating radar, found nothing conclusive. But the investigation showed that people are still actively trying to solve this case. Chapter 19. Where is Maura Murray? After 20 years, after all the investigation, all the theories, all the searches, we're left with the fundamental question: where is Maura Murray? If I had to assess the most likely scenarios based on all available evidence, most likely, Maura died from exposure in the wilderness. She ran from the crash scene, maybe to avoid police. Maybe she was disoriented. She went into the woods, got lost, died from hypothermia. Her body is still out there, hidden under vegetation, in a ravine, somewhere that hasn't been searched thoroughly. This theory explains why she hasn't been found. The wilderness is vast and unforgiving. Second most likely, Maura accepted a ride and was abducted. Someone stopped to help. Maura got in their vehicle. That person had bad intentions. Maura was harmed. Her body was disposed of. This explains the K9 scent trail ending on the road. It explains why she vanished so quickly. But if this is what happened, who was the driver? And where is Maura's body? Less likely, but possible. Maura intentionally disappeared. Maybe she planned this. Maybe she wanted to start over. Maybe she's alive somewhere, living under a new identity. This is what some people desperately want to believe: that Maura is alive, that she'll come home someday. But 20 years with no contact? No financial activity? No sightings? It's hard to believe someone could disappear that completely in the modern world. Unlikely. Suicide. Maybe Maura went into the woods intending to die. Maybe she succeeded. But this doesn't fit with other evidence. The textbooks she packed. The money she withdrew. Why do those things if you're planning to die? The truth is, we don't know. After 20 years, we still don't know. And that's what makes this case so haunting. Chapter 20. The Lessons. What can we learn from Maura Murray's case? Lesson 1. Act quickly in missing person cases. The first hours are critical. If Maura was abducted, the abductor got away because police didn't treat this as urgent immediately. Now, law enforcement knows better. Missing person cases are treated more seriously from the start. Lesson 2. Preserve evidence. Maura's car wasn't immediately secured as a crime scene. Evidence may have been lost. This is a lesson for law enforcement. Treat every suspicious disappearance as a potential crime until proven otherwise. Lesson 3. Internet investigations can help and harm the Internet has kept Maura's case alive. but it's also spread misinformation and harassed innocent people. There's a balance. Public interest can help. But armchair detectives need to be responsible. Lesson 4. Families need support. Fred Murray has suffered for 20 years. The not knowing, the endless questions. Families of missing persons need support. Mental health services, understanding, patience. Lesson 5. Some mysteries may never be solved. As much as we want answers, sometimes we don't get them. Sometimes people vanish, and we never know why or how. That's a hard truth, but it's reality. Chapter 21. Conclusion, February 9, 2004. A 21-year-old nursing student crashed her car on a rural New Hampshire road. 19 minutes later, she was gone. For 20 years, her family has searched. Police have investigated, the internet has speculated, but Maura Murray has never been found. Not alive, not dead, not a trace. Somewhere, there are answers. Maybe Maura's body is hidden in the White Mountain wilderness. Maybe someone knows what happened and has kept silent. Maybe Maura is alive somewhere, living a different life. We don't know. And after 2 decades, we may never know. But Maura's family deserves answers. Fred Murray deserves to know what happened to his daughter. If you know something, if you saw something on February 9, 2004, if you have any information, New Hampshire State Police, 603-271-26663, even the smallest detail could be the key to solving this mystery. Where is Maura Murray? What happened on that cold February night? Who knows the truth? Somewhere, someone has answers. And until those answers come, the search continues. The mystery endures. And Maura Murray remains one of the most baffling disappearances in modern American history.